The Fable series is the brainchild of one Peter Molyneux. And, much like children, the first one was a happy little accident, the second was planned yet a little flawed, and the third is a massive disappointment who most just try to forget. I say this as the youngest of three, and now I'll horribly transition to today's title as I ask the question, can you beat Fable 3 without increasing any skills? I have already attempted this with Fables 1 and 2, so feel free to check out those videos if you haven't already. But basically, it's as the title says, I am not allowed to increase my character's skills or level whatsoever. Thing is, unlike the first two games, Fable 3 uses a different experience and leveling system to a degree. Rather than getting some general experience for killing enemies as well as specific experience depending on whichever weapon, melee, ranged or magic you use to do so, Fable 3 instead just awards players with guild seals for most actions, whether that be killing enemies, completing quests, or even fist bumping people. You can then spend these seals on chests in this realm of void. I'll go more into what's in all of these chests later, but for now, just know that the main ones contain increases to your damage output for all weapon types, as well as new spells. Now with all that out of the way, let's begin. Breaking tradition, if you can call something tradition after only 2 games, rather than starting as a voiceless, near penniless peasant person, we are instead adolescent royalty enjoying the comforts of a stable living condition. We are then awoken by the soothing voice of John Cleese. Okay, so there is usually a bit where I will sometimes refer to the one famous actor the game has by their real name, but that would get very confusing very fast in Fable 3, simply because, well, look at the cast list. And now you all understand where the vast majority of the game's budget went. Anyway, I wake up, grab a brush and put a little makeup, before slowly making my way down to the garden as I have yet to be given the running shoes. I kiss my girlfriend, the soon-to-be corpse, before truly engrossing myself with the British role-playing that this game so yearns for me to play along with.
Where's the lamb sauce?
If there is one way this game improves over the previous entries, it's that less than 5 minutes in, I am already being taught the basics of combat, and in a way, I'm nearly finished with the tutorial. After beating an old man until the game says stop, I exude a level of strength that will never be seen again before the plot begins to creep in. Ignoring the frightful abominations that are the citizens of Albion, I attempted to do the right thing and stand up to my brother, the well-known tyrannical king who appears to be mad with power. Surely there is no way that this can backfire.
Who will be punished? These strangers? Or this girl? The sentence will be death. If you can't choose, I will. They will all be executed. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take them all away. Kill them now.
I will never forgive you for this.
Good. Then you will never forget it.
All any of this does is affect a side quest later in the game, so there isn't a whole lot of weight to this decision. Keep that sentiment in mind, it becomes very apparent later on. Naturally, we are not best pleased with what has transpired, so now me, Walter and Jasper escape the castle in the dead of night via the catacombs containing the corpse of my level 1 Fable 2 character, or the Master Chief I suppose. There is absolutely no way to tell which save got imported. This is where we gain our first guild seal and are transported to the Road to Rule, with Teresa from the first 2 games now resides, effectively forcing her into the story after Walter has hijacked her role from the second game. Speaking of Fable 2, remember how in that run I had to unlock a spell to activate the Cullis Gate in the Chamber of Fate, effectively filling the run before it began? Well, these games love nothing more than repeating story elements, and as such, I am now forced to unlock the Fireball spell to proceed, with no alternatives in sight, as I cannot even leave this lifeless void until the guild seal is spent and the chest is opened. So technically, no, you cannot beat Fable 3 without increasing any skills. However, a lot of you in the comments of the Fable 2 video argued that when I had to get the shock spell to proceed, it was not increasing a skill, just unlocking one. Or that it should actually be along the same lines of killing the Rad Roach in Fallout 3, as it's just something that is required and shouldn't count towards the run. So, for once I am just going to let you be the judge of whether the run is valid or not. Just know I understand the reasoning behind both sides, and I personally lean a little bit more towards the side of feeling it, but that's just me. Well, with the power of combustion, we open this secret exit and after some simple bat murdering, arrive in the Sanctuary. What is the Sanctuary? It's the pause menu. And I'm not even kidding. It's a cool idea on paper, but it makes a simple act of switching out clothes and weapons a little bit more tedious than it really should for a game released in late 2010. It also functions as a fast travel system and map, so for now we can use it to teleport to Mistpeak and begin our little revolution. Despite being a prince, someone who probably had a wealth of resources at his disposal, least of all money, we decided to bring nothing but the clothes on our back with us when we left the castle, and as such, we now have to rely on Walter to fund our spending habits for the time as we go clothes shopping for some more appropriate attire. Our cold survival disguise allows us to meet with Sabine, and after agreeing to far too many things, we are on our way to the nearby town of Brightwall to actually start the main quest. The sheer abundance of snow and the fact we have reached the month of December tells me I should probably do something Christmas themed to celebrate. I truly hope this is the festive content you've subscribed for. As we still don't have access to any traditional weapons, I have to rely on my fireball spell for the time. I mean, it's effective enough as it is the early game, but I can almost guarantee you that I'll be replacing it entirely once I get my first gun. Speaking of weapons, I cannot buy one at the local blacksmith just yet, but instead must wait until the plot gives me one, so I continue to the library in Brightwall to do just that. Fortunately, this happens almost immediately as we run into one of the only flit switches in the game requiring me to stab it. This naturally opens a room in the pause screen, allowing me to grab a weapon of my choice. Like a lot of choices, I have one of two options, those being a hammer or a sword. No axes, cleavers, katanas, or maces anymore, just hammer and sword. Variety is the spice of life, and the cupboard is empty. I go with the hammer for now as it does a little bit more damage, albeit at a much slower rate. Like clockwork, now that we have a weapon, enemies start to spawn, and what better way to get back into the swing of things than by re-killing some Hollowmen. As these are really the first proper enemies you fight, as I am not counting the bats and wolves as I barely even attempt to fight back, it should come as no surprise that they're just as brittle as ever. 2 swings from me mallet explodes the bones of even the most resilient one of the bunch. I suppose the attempt is made to try and have them overwhelm you with numbers, but unlike Fable 2, you start with the ability to block and flourish, so unlike before, I actually have some defensive options as well as a pretty great crowd control tool if I ever decide to just swing the weapon around me like a hula hoop. I did switch off to the sword just to compare, and to be honest, they're just about the same, so it's down to a matter of preference. Near the end of my zombie killing adventure, we are met with yet another flit switch, this time for firearms. Again, just like melee weapons, we have only 2 options, rifle or pistol, with no variations of either. I won't sugarcoat it, this sucks, and I desperately miss my blunderbuss. I chose the rifle for literally no reason, and then used it to fight through the last few Hollowmen before reaching the music box. Thankfully, this time grabbing the thing won't lead to a lifetime of misery, but rather it allows us to see an oddly high quality cutscene of Logan, essentially discussing how evil he is. I am then thrust back to the road to rule, and thankfully this time I can just walk past all of the chests and use the portal to escape. Back in the real world and all the shops now open, allowing me to see about getting a better weapon. Once more, traditional weapons do not exist, rather only special variations of swords, hammers, pistols and rifles do. The reason I'm even bothering to get one of these over the base weapons I start with is because these weapons can increase their damage output the more you use them and fulfill specific requirements. Whereas the ones I currently have can only be increased by opening chests on the road to rule. For example, the weapon that caught my eye was this pistol that used to belong to Reaver because it has a slightly higher base damage than the starting pistol, plus if I can decrease my morality to as low as possible, it will get an additional plus 7 damage overall, as well as a 30% damage increase against non-evil enemies. Now, are there better weapons with better augments out there? Yes, absolutely, but because this game hates fun, the weapons that appear in the shop are grabbed from a total of 50, with only 4 showing up in each shop. There are 3 weapon shops in the game, and these weapons never swap out, even once you buy them. Meaning I am left with 12 weapons to choose between this entire playthrough, not counting other random legendary weapons that may be behind certain demon doors or silver key chests. For this run, my options are honestly pretty miserable. One weapon requires me to play with people over Xbox Live, so that's not going to work, and others require such things as having a certain number of lovers or having multiple children. Why is having children an issue? Well, now it's time to talk more about the Road to Rule chests like I mentioned at the beginning. Not only do these chests contain new spells and damage upgrades, but they also include features that were once just common staples of the series by default, such as buying and selling property, higher job ranks, and the ability to have children or even fall in love with people. So not only are my methods for increasing these weapons' damage values limited, but just getting the funds to buy them is a pain, because like I said, I can't even increase my rank in jobs around town, so I need to grind away playing Smoke on the Water on beginner for 20 minutes straight just to collect the funds. It would have actually been longer, but I had a feeling this may have been an issue at the beginning, so I chose the elegant royal outfit as it sells for the most money out of the 2. While I've been going on about this, you may have noticed I'm looking more and more like the Lion from the Wizard of Oz by the day, along with a new outfit. Well, the hair was entirely my own doing, but the clothes and beard are part of the next stage of the main story, as I need to disguise myself as a mercenary so I can sneak into the nearby camp and deal with their leader. You have also probably deduced that all of the murder is to lower my moral standing, and you would be correct. It only takes about 10 minutes before I'm the spawn of the devil, and can add an extra 7 damage to my pistol. Does it make a huge difference? Honestly, for now, yes. The mercenaries at the camp saw through my clever disguise, and rather than crush their heads in between my thighs, I was able to take most of them out with about 3 shots each. The real test would be their boss, Saker. He has a lot of health and tends to not flinch when you hit him, and considering my new pistol outclasses my melee weapon in both range and damage, I opt for an incredibly slow, albeit effective strategy. The pistol can fire 3 bullets before it needs to reload, so my plan was as follows. Shoot, shoot, shoot. Roll, roll, reload. If you start the reload animation and then cancel it with the first roll, the game still counts it as you're reloading the weapon, so by the time the second roll is done, you can fire the gun again. I basically just repeated this ad nauseum until I brought him to his knees. Despite taking close to 100 bullets at fairly close range, Saker is still very much alive, and I'm able to present him with the usual life or death scenario. I choose to save him because we never see him again anyway, so either way, it doesn't matter. That's 2 of 3 promises for the Dwellers complete, which means all that remains is getting the people of Brightwall to help them with their food problem. Well, the townsfolk aren't exactly happy to see me, as you can imagine, and without the gold to pay off my fines, I can either resist arrest or work it off through community service. I thought about working it off, that was until I realised I would need to bake pies for the rest of eternity, and as such, I just ditched my community service and just had a few extra friends follow me around while I continued with the main quest. Remember how in Fable 2 every now and then you'd hit a wall that you couldn't get past until you had a high enough renown? Well, that's what's happening here. Except, like a lot of things, the renown system was scrapped, and instead I'm just required to get 30 guild seals. The 100 plus I have do not count, by the way. It has to be 30 new seals, because of course it does. The easiest way to gather them in bulk and quickly is by side quests, so that's what I'm off to do. First off, I help these 2 gentlemen track down a long lost play with the help of this Wish-branded Sherlock Holmes ripoff. Simply put, I put on a costume, press the emote button when the game tells me to, and then sit through a few cutscenes. The last portion has me fight more bandits, which are just reskins of Saker's men, so no trouble there. I then get to witness the play I helped rediscover, and after cringing so hard it nearly kills me, I am awarded 20 guild seals, requiring only 10 more. Now, it is strongly implied by your quest log that the next best quest to complete is that of the gnomes, which begins the side quest of this game's equivalent of the gargoyles. However, you do not actually have to get the seals this way. The game just requires you to obtain 30 by any means necessary. So I walked around town, all the while being chased by the guards mind you, and began shaking people's hands, as each time I did so, I got a single guild seal. I do this to 10 people, and just like that, they are standing waiting at the gates to praise me and take what's left of their food supply to the mountain people. I also make a promise to the people to help to restore the town's library to its former glory. These promises are the bread and butter of the game's morale choices, and they mean absolutely nothing, but more on that later. For now, me and Mr. White head off to Morningwood, don't laugh, by way of the monorail. It looks like somebody forgot to stop Captain Ronald Curtis because the thing explodes before we even get a chance to test it out. In actuality, it was attacked by Hobs. About time they showed up, really. It seems a little odd to introduce them after the Hollowmen and Bandits, as they appear to be weaker than them. They barely do any damage, and they can take just as little. Speaking of taking damage, it probably comes as no surprise, but just like Fable 2, there is no armor system. But what's even weirder, and something you've probably already noticed, you also don't have a health bar, or any way to increase your maximum overall health. Instead, the game has Call of Duty health. Like, you take damage, and after a while the screen will pulse red for a bit when you're low, and either you can take a potion to heal yourself, or if you don't want to, you can just wait a few seconds and you'll regen completely. I feel it was important to bring this up, as by this stage in Fable 1 and 2, I was guzzling down health potions and resurrection vials like nobody's business, just to stay alive for more than 2 minutes. So in other words, damage output may eventually become a problem, but no matter what, I am fine in terms of defense. The Hobs here are quite numerous, but much like, say, Skyrim, a lot of the main quests in Fable 3 have some sort of invincible NPC travelling along with you. Granted, they barely do any damage here, but they can distract people all the same, and considering my build by this stage is the world's slowest third-person shooter, this works quite well. All this isn't to say that my melee weapons are useless, oh god no, far from it. On certain enemies like the bigger Hobs and humans, they can actually be devastating, as having access to a flourish right off the bat allows me to knock them off their feet, where I can then insta-kill them with a ground stab, or wait and let my dog maul them to death. It comes in fairly handy during the final encounter with the Hobs in the rundown Coliseum. When the final Hob is killed, I am whisked back to the road to rule, I say no, Walter literally gives the Hob a heart attack, and we finally exit to the nearby swamplands. Apologies if there isn't a lot of side stuff going on, but other than when it's required for the story, there is absolutely no reason to do them. All you really find in chest is a handful of gold or the odd potion, and 90% of the side quests only reward you with guild seals, which of course have less worth than dirt today. After wandering around Shrek's backyard for a bit, we happen upon a fort, which is exactly where we were planning to take the monorail to, so that's incredibly convenient. We are here to gather more allies, of course, the main two being Ben Finn, a good soldier as far as we're aware, and Major Swift, a man whose mustache may be slowly engulfing his entire face. We are put to work shortly after arriving, as we are to test out the mortar for the coming Hollow Man raid. Turns out they are already here, so I put it to good use. I don't think you can actually feel the mortar section, it's more so you just keep blowing up Hollow Men for fun until they kick you off the mortar and tell you to defend the rear gate. Skipping ahead to when they break down the doors, and it's about on par with our last Hollow Man encounter. There is just substantially more of them this time around than there were in the labyrinth beneath Brightwall. The real challenge of this section comes when the last Hollow Man goes down. A nearby wisp flies into the grave of Lieutenant Simmons, and now it's time for a mini boss fight. Well, actually, this just might be this game's version of a boss fight, as there is nothing that I would consider a traditional boss fight in a bigger scale, really. Anyway, much like Saker, he is just a bigger version of a common enemy, except he has the ability to shoot lightning, raise the dead, and generally just not give a shit when you hit him. I would have just employed the same 3-shot roll strategy as I did for Saker, but the respawning Hollow Men makes that a little difficult. Despite their numbers, they never really pose all that much of a threat, especially when I began treating it like it was a game of zombies and started leading a train of them around in circles while taking the odd shot at them. That is 2 COD references in less than 10 minutes. How strange. Back on track, after many a bullet, Simmons was dragged kicking and screaming back to his grave, completing the quest. I then make yet another pointless promise before continuing on the path into the sewers and re-emerging in Bowerstone once more. Not the castle, however, we are instead in the worst part of town, the industrial section. You can tell it's bad because Reaver is here, literally shooting people in the streets, and nobody cares. The reason we are here is to find allies and recruit them to our cause. Have I said that exact sentence already? Probably. The plot is rather repetitive, much like a lot of things in this game. Speaking of repetition, Paige, the leader of the local resistance, will not accept our help until we've collected 100 guild seals for her, so you know what that means, more side questing. Before that though, it was time to head to the marketplace and check for new weapons. This is the second of 3 blacksmiths after all, so fingers crossed for something worthwhile. We sort of get lucky. The pistol and rifle won't be better than my own, but Mallet's mallet is a solid improvement on my melee weapons. The chances of getting its extra plus 15 damage augment by killing 200 small enemies is unlikely before the end of the game. However, its other 2 augments that give each swing a chance to knock down an enemy are attainable. One requires me to smash a set number of crates, which is so easy it's almost laughable, and the other requires me to make 10 friends. Normally, that wouldn't be possible, but after you become king, spoilers by the way, you automatically become friendly with a certain amount of people due to the whole revolution thing, so that should pop as well. Feeling good about my purchase, I spent the rest of my funds on some armor that I found in the clothing store. Again, it offers no protection whatsoever, but I just think it looks cool. The first side quest I decided to tackle for its whopping 40 guild seal reward was the game. Not only is it named after my favourite Disturbed song, but it is by far one of the most unique quests in the entire game, as it has you take part in a D&D campaign. I mean, to tell the truth, it's mainly just more combat, but at least the premise is interesting. Also, before someone asks, the sword I have here is a Scimitar of Baron Slaying plus 3. It is part of the quest, and as such gets taken away from you once it's complete, so no, I unfortunately do not get to use the cool new weapon. Next, it's back to the poor part of town as I offer to help Laszlo find his fiancée, who has been kidnapped by the local criminal populace. You shoot, you crush, and you hold someone's hand all the way to the exit. Nothing out of the ordinary. Well, if you actually save your significant other at the beginning from Logan's insanity, then they will be the captured victim here. It's a neat surprise, sure, but doesn't amount to much once the quest is complete, other than asking them to come back to you. Which is something that my guy lacks the capacity for, because if you remember, I have yet to open the treasure chest that allows him to date people. Anywho, I only need a few more of these precious seals before I can progress with the story, so I went after the next quest in the drop-down menu, that being the voice. And what a mistake that was. I completely forgot that this quest was actually part of the Understone DLC quest pack. There is nothing inherently wrong with it, just that you have to fight through a lot of enemies as you go through a semi-gauntlet of encounters, and considering that also describes the next story quest, it's going to get a bit repetitive. All the enemies are just reskins of things we've already killed, such as Skeleton Hobs and Skeleton Wolves. Well, that is all except for the literal robot that you fight at the end.
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way. I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Well, once Mr. Out of Place is reduced to scrap, we make it to the small village of Understone. Get it? Understone, because it's beneath Bowerstone. Anyway, the guy who sent us down here originally tells me we can essentially enslave the town, and considering my past endeavours in other games, I say no, grab my guild seals, and can now continue with the story. Returning to the Resistance, and it's now time for me and Paige to go undercover to one of Reaver's house parties. If you've ever played a Fable game before, or paid attention to me sneaking into the Mercenary camp earlier, then you know stealth is just not something that the developers allow, so instead it's time for this iteration of the arena. It's definitely the shortest of the trilogy, as you just fight Hobs, Hollowmen, Bandits, Tusken Raiders, and then Balverines. The Balverines are somehow both more and less annoying to fight than they were in Fable 2. Their points attack is now followed up by a few swipes, so you can't just sidestep it like before, but on the plus side, getting hit by them doesn't knock you off your feet, and honestly, that's worth the trade-off for me. I'm going to just assume I have silver bullets of some kind, because despite my weakened state, it doesn't take a lot to put them down. That's not to say this arena was a cakewalk. I may have said it was the shortest in the series, but it certainly didn't feel like it when dealing with the other waves, especially since Paige barely did anything. Although a part of that may be down to the fact I have yet to be knocked out in the run, and as such I was determined to get to the end of the game without that ever happening. I know it's entirely possible, as I literally have the achievement for doing so this was just another small challenge for myself that I decided to do for some unknown reason. After the Balverine wave, Paige attempts to do something useful and finally tries to shoot Reaver, but only fires one bullet before giving up after he deflected it. I mean, if we both shot him at the same time from multiple angles, we could have killed him, but whatever. I make another promise, and then it's off to the castle to be reminded Logan is evil after he shoots Major Mustache right in front of us. Somehow, Logan does not spot me in the crowd, despite the fact no one in Albion dresses like this, allowing me to get away and plot our next move. Turns out before Swift died, he gave us some information, and remember how I mentioned we fought Tusken Raiders at Reaver's Manor? Well, it's off to Tatooine to attempt to make nice with the locals, to do what else but recruit more allies. I swear, this will be the last time that we repeat this plot point. The fight up to the boat isn't worth going over. I murdered enough guards earlier in Brightwall that I'm an expert at taking them out by now, even if these are the new grape flavoured variety. The boat journey is over before it truly begins, as we for some reason decide to take the one ship without cannons, and as such get promptly put in our place. Conveniently, we wash up on the shore of exactly where we needed to be. Let's just ignore the massive ocean between Albion and Aurora. There's a long stretch here where me and Walter are just exploring some sand ruins without any combat, which is honestly a nice change of pace. It doesn't last long, mind you, and before you know it, the two of us are accidentally unleashed some nightmarish creature upon the lands. Haha, whoops. The shadow men you fight here in droves all have a single hit point, so it's more about them overwhelming you with numbers. Considering that hasn't been working for the hollow men for 3 games straight now, I'll let you all figure out how this encounter went. Some of the shadows possess these weird bird robot creatures that are pretty reminiscent of Jack's minions from the first game, so that's a nice reference if it was intentional. Trust me, there is nothing we Fable fans love more than callbacks and nostalgia. I should probably mention that all the while this is happening, Sir Walter is having a bit of a crisis due to his crippling claustrophobia, along with losing our only light source. Why don't I just light the torch with my hand that literally shoots fire? This culminates with a boss fight against this cool looking angel statue with a giant mace. Unfortunately for him, he has the easiest ranged attacks to avoid in the entire game, possibly this series, allowing me to effortlessly strafe out of the way while continuing to lay the damage on him with my seemingly never-ending bullets. It's tedious, but gets results, so within time he pops, and now that Walter is temporarily blind for story reasons, we have to lead him out into the desert and find civilization. Long story short, we are presented with the illusion of choice, sit through the darkness creature messing with our mind, which was all the rage in the early 2010s after Scarecrow and Arkham Asylum, and after we pass out, get rescued by Ben Finn, and wake up in the last major town of the game. Much like when we arrived in Brightwall for the first time, we cannot access any of the shops, so really it's just some dialogue before they heal up Walter, and now after yet another promise, it's finally time to begin our revolution. Considering this whole game has been building up to this very moment, you have to assume it's going to be this grand climactic battle on an amazing scale as you fight to wrestle your kingdom back from your tyrannical brother. Right? You wish. The entire revolution amounts to you shooting the same guard enemy copy and pasted across the docks and through the Bowerstone market. Consider that this whole section took me less than 10 minutes without any real upgrades bar the +7 damage on my pistol, and you begin to notice that if I'd leveled up, I would have completed it in a substantially less time. You don't even have to fight through the castle to get to Logan. The game enters a loading screen when you get to the castle grounds, and then it just cuts to you and Walter kicking down his door, and him essentially going, "Oh my bad, I surrender." At least being king is kind of cool. I will say I have been wearing that Santa hat for so long that I was taken aback for a moment when my guy walked out with his luscious long hair and mustache combo like he was about to audition for a Hall & Oates cover band. We have now reached the point where he put Logan on trial for his crimes. Logan then reveals everything he did was to actually prepare for the arrival of the darkness, that being the creature we met in Shifting Sandland. Naturally, we now need to prepare for this creature, and my first order of business is to not execute Logan because he offers the support of all of his troops. I have no idea if this actually makes a difference or not, but as you're all about to see, it really does not matter. So, for context, and those who have never played the game and have no idea what's going on, this darkness is going to reach Albion in 1 year's time. To stop it from supposedly killing everyone, you need to have 6.5 million gold in your castle's treasuries. Basically, 1 gold saves 1 person. What's meant to make this goal hard to obtain, however, is the fact that keeping all of your previous promises will cost a lot of money. So you have to decide, do you keep said promises and fill the treasury from your own pocket, or do you break the promises and side with Reaver and become a tyrant like your brother as you focus everything on making money? Well, in the end, none of it matters. Wanna know why? You don't actually need money to keep your promises. Yeah, you can literally agree to everything despite what is, or in this case isn't, in your treasury. Sure, it does put you in the negative, which makes reaching the goal of 6.5 million gold total even harder, but now it's time for the second major flaw of this system. There are barely any repercussions for not reaching the goal or having 0 funds in the treasury. All that happens is that most of the houses in Bowerstone and all the shops will be vacant for a set amount of time after the final battle. Sure, that may be inconvenient for some, but they will eventually repopulate anyway, and it's not like it leads to a bad ending. In fact, doing things this way will still have people praise you as a fair, just and wonderful king. It's dumb. No ifs, ands, or buts. With all that in mind, I agree to every single promise I made, bankrupting the nation and being loved for doing so. Throughout these choices, there are 3 smaller quests thrown in to help pad out the runtime, but honestly, they are nothing worth going over in great detail. You save a town from a handful of Balverines in one, help Paige crack down on crime by killing some bandits in another, and finally steal one of the 7 Chaos Emeralds from Sandopolis Zone. That last one, in fact, is just so you can donate the rare jewel to the treasury for funds, which again makes it ultimately pointless. All of this culminates with another battle through Bowerstone Market, the only difference being this time is it's gotten a little bit more Silent Hilly since we last saw it, and now, thanks to my good deeds, whenever I do a flourish or charge up a ranged attack, angel wings sprout from my spine. Wonderful. This final battle is just me, Walter, and Ben killing more of the Shadow Men and Bird robots along with 2 more of the Angel Sentinels before making it to the final boss fight. The final fight is none other than a possessed Walter after the crawler zips down his throat. Ah, you see, the game started with a fight against Walter and now it ends with a fight against Walter.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
He's pretty tanky compared to before, but I also have a gun this time, so I'd say that evens the playing field. Honestly, it's a fairly similar fight to that of the battle with the Commandant in Fable 2. He even has similar ground projectiles. The only real difference is again the increased health and the fact he has the ability to use the Assassin's Rush, which by the way is bullshit because even we cannot get access to that ability in the game. The double roll strat just continues to dominate over the rest of the combat system, and as such, after a few minutes I deliver the killing blow, resulting in the death of Walter, finishing the game and proving maybe you can beat Fable 3 without increasing any skills. Here is now me running through the road to rule after the final battle, just as proof that the only chest obtained is the fireball spell. Now that the challenge is over, I spent all of my sales upgrading my melee, ranged and magic attacks to max. As a bunch of you said during the last 2 videos, you wanted to see me spend all of the experience at the end. Also, here's what the game says about my weapons. Some of these descriptions seem accurate enough, but again, one of them is augmented due to shock spell use. I'm going to assume that's a bug of some sort, but if someone knows why, please let me know. As for my final thoughts on the run, this was, by far, the easiest of the trilogy. Having the maximum amount of health and defense from the very beginning due to it not being something you can improve made it a lot simpler. Like I said, I never even got knocked out once. Sure, not being able to improve my weapons all that much was a bit of a hassle, but unlike in Fable 1 where the weaker weapons caused combat to be difficult, all it amounted to this time was it made things take longer and become more tedious. With that, the trilogy has been completed. When the day finally comes and we get some understanding of the mechanics and how experience, skills and the like will work in the new upcoming Fable 4/reboot, I would love to be able to revisit the challenge for that game as well. Until that day finally arrives, I'm sure I will have some more Fable content sprinkled in from time to time, to try and make the wait less agonizing for all of us. Regardless, that's going to be the end of this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like, and if you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe to try one of these videos out every week. My name's Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.